Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court and CPS issues. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and to honor alienated parents next month on International Parental Alienation Awareness Day, Epiphany Awaits is offering a faith-based retreat for alienated parents with both in-person and a Zoom option on April 23rd through the 25th, 2021 at the Resolution Center in Jacksonville, Florida. Now, it's free on Sunday the 25th and at 1 p.m. Eastern Time via Zoom, and it's available for purchase after that date for $24.99. And the speakers will be including Dr. Mark Roseman and other professionals focused on guidance, friendship, and compassion. And scholarships are available. Email request for application and registration form for epiphaniesawait@gmail.com. That's EPIPHANIESAWAIT@gmail.com. And I have a return guest. I'm happy to have Cheryl A. Kennedy, who is the author of And Justice for All, An American Illusion, which is found on Amazon. Good evening, Cheryl. I'm so glad to have you back.
Good evening, Marianne. Thanks for having me back again. How have you been?
I have been tired.
You've been a busy girl. Doing lots of shows. That's great. Covering lots of topics.
Oh, definitely. How are you?
Me, I'm okay. I'm hanging in there.
Yeah.
I guess let's talk about the military getting in here, because the other night I was watching CPS News Network, and they're calling for the military because we have so many issues with children being stolen and human trafficked and kidnapped. And as I've said about the military before, national security, we don't have national security, and we need it now. This nation is American, and it needs to be restored to American Republic under the U.S. Constitution, adhering and abiding by the laws and rights of the U.S. Constitution, which is not happening in our courts at all. I question still whose yellow fringe flag is sitting in those courts. Is it Britain's? Under our usurped American flag. It's such a serious problem here, and we're still sitting here paying the price daily, especially the people in the courthouses. And I just don't feel people get it, or there's some issue. The other day I was watching the George Floyd trial, and they had one of the men who was a witness there, and he was an MMA fighter. Actually, what's ironic is his name is Donald Williams, which I have a judge in my case who's that name, and he's a crooked judge, so it's easy for me to remember his name. But he goes, I think, by the second, I think, was on his name, the man at George Floyd's hearing. But he was talking about how he started, when Chauvin was on Floyd's neck, how he started cursing. He was getting more, upset about it, and he was getting more vocal against him, as other people were standing there too. And then he was saying how there's just no human connection. And I'm like, yeah, I've been fighting no human connection since I started fighting 15 years ago. It's like this mentality like that we're not like human beings. And I just find it so disheartening that we're treated this way, and that our court system got just worse and worse over these years, even though many people know about the problems, but just no one has done anything about it. So I'm like, Mayday, Mayday, SOS, help, we need, American families are being tortured, and it needs to come to a head. We need these courts. There should be warning signs. Enter at your own risk, because you may not come out alive. People die all the time going into these courts, or their kids are kidnapped, or whatever. Your children are alienated. So there's just so many serious problems, and we're not getting help. So do you want to comment on that, Marianne?
Well, it's like, I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but they should have you sign a waiver form upon entering the courthouse. How you say go on a trail ride with a horse. They have you sign a waiver in case something should happen. Well, in case something should happen and they're taking your kids away based on false allegations, and you have a heart attack in the courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was, I don't know if it was you I told, but it was last year, a woman, this poor woman in Great Britain, they took her kids away and she died of a heart attack right then and there in the courtroom.
Oh, really? Huh?
Yeah. And so this is like all over, and they should just shut down family court. And I've said this, I don't know how many times. It's so corrupt. It just doesn't, it just doesn't end.
No, I know. I know. And the CPS should be abolished too. I mean,
Yes.
not that I will ever want to see a child harmed by their own parents, but I almost feel it would be better that happened than the chaos that they're causing here, stealing children for, for um, the foster care system or adoption, because they're causing such trauma to so many children. And it would be better to just abolish it and
Mhm.
try, it should be really there to help children who are in need, not
Mhm.
this incentivized system
Mhm.
for the, Title 4D or E incentives. That should just all be funds that are halted.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's just a nightmare. It's just a nightmare, and no one gets help, and it's so disgusting and terrible.
Mhm.
And even the other day, there's a man who I knew he's from my county. He I never really knew his story, and then he gave me more details about it. But here he was, he's so stressed from what these people are causing him, and he thought he was having a heart attack. And he
Mm.
goes to the hospital and he encounters someone who's tied to his case. And then they start causing him havoc in the hospital. Like, you can't even go
Ah.
to the hospital. They're like attacking you.
Mhm.
He's like,
Mhm.
they're like, he was so, I mean, I don't want to go into everything about what happened, but he's like, they're domestic terrorists. He goes, he was afraid for
Yes.
his life. I go, I know they are. And so many, as I mentioned in your show, I years ago, I exposed all these cases, people with these heart attacks. I had intestinal injuries. I mean, you just have such physical harm, nevertheless the trauma that's
Mhm.
caused. And
Mhm.
it's an outrage that this is still going on. So I don't know.
Oh,
We just really need people who care and have a humane bone in their body,
yeah, where are
and
they? Where are they? I mean, I know people are trying to talk to legislature and get things changed, but that just moves so slowly. I
oh, I
don't,
know.
I'm just like mind boggled as to how all this could just go away. And CPS should be totally abolished. And then people say, well, then what are you going to do? Well, you know, they should have a police task force that you would call in, a complaint. Let's just say, Johnny's getting beaten up down the street right in front of the house. You know who's doing it. And okay, so it's right in front of your eyes. So you make that phone call, and then the police go and do their job,
Mm-hmm.
and not call some agency that's just going to write up a report and blow it off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Even as a nurse, I would write up a report, and this report was something to see. And it got blown off the following, what was about 3 or 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I'm just thinking, but
because
I
it's
have evidence. Yeah.
they just ignore, they just don't do anything, and
Mm-mm.
there's no accountability. Actually, here in Ulster County, they recently did create, at the end of the month, a new commission on oversight and accountability,
Mhm.
and more geared towards policing and things of that nature. But like in my case, I have all sorts of policing issues in both aspects of my case in this county. So and they all know I'm like after them, like left and right. And
Mhm.
actually, they have with me tomorrow. I've gone now to the controller because I'm been going off at the attorney general, that stop depriving me of my rights to aid your crooks. I go, this has to come to a head here, because it interferes with my job.
Mhm.
It interferes with my life still, this wrongful conviction, which I was defending my rights, and I had nothing lawful in my case whatsoever. So I've now gone to the controller, because the one thing that's good in this county right now, Ulster County, there's a lot of newer people.
Mhm.
So that's good, because you've had the long-term crooked people forever, And now, but it's getting the newer people to be accountable. And, so I've basically said to three parties there, I said, I want I want crooks off the payroll. I go, get somebody in your Homeland Security, you're the Sheriff's Department, whoever, find some policing. I want people off the payroll. No more free ride for these criminals on the payroll. So we'll see what happens. So they know tomorrow I have my deadline with them. Because then I said, if you three can't do it, I want you off the payroll. So that's what I'm saying to the controller. And this controller is new. And the other one, he should have resolved my matter years ago. But, he was just too crooked, as everybody else was. And so, so we'll see what happens. But, it's just been the same saga left and right. No one does anything. So, I've like had it with the whole thing. And so, I wanted to mention, because last time when I was on here, I mentioned a situation that had taken place in Chicago, and there was a documentary that I couldn't remember the name of it. And I looked it up, and I knew it was something with shots, but it was called 16 Shots. And it's a really good documentary about a case that took place in Chicago, a corrupt police incident that occurred. But, and this is going to be interesting to see with this George Floyd case, because like in that Chicago case, here the jury ruled, their decision on how many years they wanted this, this police officer to stay in jail. But then it went from a jury trial then to the bench, where the bench then was ruling and adjusting the term down substantially. So that circumvents your whole jury trial. So that's a big issue, constitutional issue there. And so in this George Floyd case, it's going to be very similar, very interesting to see how this all plays out exactly. But I think so far, I haven't been watching it, but from what I've read, everybody seems to not, pretty much not going with Chauvin, that he acted, wrong. And he, I don't think how can anybody say he didn't, so, but you need accountability and you need good policing, because, basically this court is a basically show for what we know doesn't really exist,
Right.
It's theatrics. And this is all theatrics that we're watching Kamala Harris and Biden and, the fraud of the whole Congress. I mean, they need to take down the whole election process. There's so many things that need to just fall. And so the military should really get in here and just take responsibility, shut it down. And, because I really do feel that all these cases, especially the family law, the CPS, and then all the other types of cases too, they really do all need to have a review, make settlements to people, have children returned to people. I mean, that's a big project. I was talking about that, I don't know how many years ago, even with Kamala Harris and Obama and them, and it's like, really, we're still doing the same thing here? How many years later? It's really like telling us to like, hey, go screw yourselves.
I know.
Much,
well, the thing I know they were making fun of on Facebook was Biden trying to make it up the steps to Air Force One.
I saw that.
And I'm thinking, okay, just watching this is like elder abuse. And why wasn't anyone helping this old man as he stumbled? Where was his detail? Where was, someone guiding him up the stairs? It was, I couldn't believe I was watching this.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, because he is up there in age.
Yeah,
he could easily get very hurt on those stairs.
Well, remember when Ford fell down the stairs?
I never saw that. I didn't know that.
Oh, you've got to get on YouTube. Yeah, I remember when that happened. And he was young. I mean, he was a young president, but yeah, I just, I don't know. I think I just see him just as a puppet. He's just there to serve some purpose. I don't know.
I know, and they just, it's so weird, but I just look at so much as theatrics, and to
Mhm.
me, so much of it is a waste of time. People know the government's corrupt. I've been like twice recently, just in stores over the last few weeks, and like I'll just start talking with someone next to me, and like I was talking with a lady about the COVID shot,
Mhm.
and I said, well, yeah, I'm not getting it. I go, no, I know how corrupt the government is. I go, I ain't getting it. And she's like, I know the government is really corrupt, and
Ugh.
you just hear people who will, just start off, oh yeah, the government's really corrupt. But meanwhile, they don't even know the extent of how corrupt. They just
Mhm.
know it's corrupt. And actually, I'm going to make this, actually, I don't know why it just came to my mind, but one of the times I was talking with a woman, I don't know if you ever heard of this. I had never heard of this actually, but someone I know who's Greek, they were celebrating their Greek saint's birthday, and I said, "What is the Greek saint birthday? I never heard of it."
Mhm.
And his name is John. So he celebrates, Saint John, John the Baptist. He celebrates that saint's birthday. So I never heard of this. And then literally, I swear, I love like serendipities like this. It was like a day later, a day or two at the most, and I happened to go into a drugstore, and I'm waiting online. And this woman at the counter has a beautiful cross on. And this lady goes to her, oh, where did you get that cross? It's so beautiful. And she's like, oh, it's Greek. And I said, oh, isn't that interesting? It's Greek. So I end up, by the time I get up there, I say to her, I never heard of this Greek tradition, but it's about, you celebrate saint birthdays. And she's like, yes, my name is Catherine. So I celebrate St. Catherine's birthday. I said, oh,
Aw.
really? I said, oh. And so, she's telling me, the meanings and this and that. And so then I said something. I don't know how we got on the topic, but I said something about corruption. And so she's like, oh, well, corruption, you need, she's like, call on St. George. And I said, St. George, okay. And why? And then when I come home and I look up St. George is the saint of the military. So
No
that's why I
kidding.
wanted to say it. So I said, oh, so I was like, okay. So I go. So I look at it in a spiritual sense, because I do things like, like different. I believe in all sorts of spiritual gods and beings,
Mhm.
and so I'm like, okay, so Saint John. I got
Mhm.
to look up Saint. I got to look up Saint George, but I thought that it was interesting. Saint George was the patron saint of the military.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so let them know that the Saint George is looking out for them in the military.
They also need Saint Michael the Archangel, or I think
Oh
we
yeah, that now
all
I'll call
need him. Yeah.
Saint. I know. I always call on Saint Michael, Archangel Michael. I just actually got today. I don't know if you ever watched this show. It's actually very good. It's called. He's online. It's called Monkey Works. Have you ever seen it?
No.
No, he does, he'll be on BitChute or some of those shows. And what he does is he has a show, and it'll be about, it's like planes that are military planes. And like, he'll have them all in the sky, even in other countries, like, and he'll go over what they're doing or where they're going. It's amazing. Sometimes you see how many fires there are going on in the country. It's like, oh my gosh. But, he'll have like, they'll go to Gitmo, so of course I have that interest. But and what was interesting, he has a website where you can buy things.
Hmm.
And I went on there, and I was really surprised to see he had this anointing oil from Jerusalem. And it's olive oil. There was also, I think there was myrrh and frankincense and some other things in it.
Oh.
And so I just got it. I just opened it today. So I blessed myself for our show tonight. And then I bought a soap. He makes homemade soaps. I was so surprised. So I bought a homemade soap just to help, sponsor him and stuff of that nature. So, but I like that. It's just a different type of show, a video to watch.
Uh-huh.
So,
That's
so
really
I'm like,
interesting. I'm gonna have to look
yeah,
that
it's
up.
interesting. So,
Well,
yeah.
because
So, and then, huh?
oh, I'm sorry, because like after it was kind of the election night or around that time, I was doing a podcast, and it's like all these military cargo planes flying over our house because we're right by like the airport. I'm
Hmm.
like one right after another. and luckily
Mm-hmm.
the microphone didn't pick it up. But I'm going, I wonder what's going on. And that's when all the military was going into Washington, probably.
Oh, uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, he'll do all sorts of things about, planes are here, he's all different types of planes and, you know,
Yeah.
who knows exactly what they really are doing. But I like when they go into these prisons or they're going, so I'm
Yeah.
always like, I hope they're rounding people up
Yeah,
because there's a
right.
lot of people to round up.
There are,
That's
there
for
are.
sure.
Oh yeah, and I'm sorry, I heard those cargo planes. I think that was in January. I totally misspoke. Sorry about that.
Hmm.
But yeah.
I know sometimes when I'm in New Jersey, I will be close to a place where too there's a lot of planes. They're just flying all around. I don't know what they're doing,
Mhm.
but I know what you mean though. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But to
Mhm.
me, if you're going to do something, do it now. Like I mean, I just want to be moving on in life. Summertime's coming. It's like who wants to be cooped up and wondering about what's going on here?
Mhm.
If you're going to take this government down, take it down. I was actually talk about national security. I'm just going to bring up some points. Because the last time I brought that up more so. But I'll tell you, there was one of these shows, and I have written about it because for years I've talked about a new banking system. I'm like, why isn't there a new banking system in here? Because
Mhm.
I think a lot of this is tied to the banking system. And so I saw a show on the quantum financial system, the new one that's supposed to come in, and I was like so upset because it was international sovereignty. And I'm like, it's really creating the new world order. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to be protected here. I mean, I'm sure one of the issues we have right now is with the international aspect of the Federal Reserve, IMF, and all this, so I was really upset to not see it. To me, we need to have our own sovereignty and
Mhm.
other nations do too. I could see you want to look at things from money laundering or whatever, but really our protection is the most critical, and especially for our banking. And that's the thing, they don't arrest any of the banking crooks. So
No.
you got the same bankers, the same crooked people creating a new banking system. It's like, hello, like what's the problem here? That's why a lot of these people should have been removed years ago. So I was upset about that. Then I also saw, I was like, oh my God, this is another thing. Was Now I don't know how this operates normally, but it was these two, I don't remember the name of them. This was about maybe 2-3 weeks ago. These two railroad companies want to merge, and they'll be the merger will create where they go into Mexico. So I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, well, that's just pile everybody right in into the trains, to bring in illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. How they don't stop this immigration, and that's why we needed a wall for years. And so these are to me all national security things that you
Mhm.
have to be watching what's going on all the time in national security.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's unacceptable because we have so much usurpation here. They really need to crack down on so many different things. And even that video you were showing me about the Black Lives Matter, about the women wanting to overthrow the government, which,
Mhm.
it's not an American government, so it's de facto. But, but I was thinking the whole Marxist, this is, we are a republic, it's constitutional, you know, Marxist, I mean, we have enough, fascism, communism, Nazism, we got everything under the sun running in this country.
Mhm.
So, in a way, that, to be wanting to take our government down to make it Marxist is, truly another national security breach,
Yeah.
plus all
Yeah.
these corporations funding them. When meanwhile, a lot of these corporations are covering up what's going on anyway, so, all these different things are national security issues,
Right.
and we have serious problems. And
Mhm.
as I was getting on here tonight, to I want to go into Cuomo. I don't know if I should backtrack first and then come to this. I don't want to forget it though.
Mhm.
I just before I got on this video with you, there is an assemblyman in the New York Senate who's one of the ones I like better, just because he has been in the military, he's been in Iraq, he's fought there, he's gone into like help with Hurricane Katrina. He is an attorney. I have asked him to make sure everybody's also office are American. I don't know what he's done or anything, but he had sent an email out that was talking about how they passed this budget through the other day. So I forget how much it is, 212 billion, something like this. It's this big, huge budget that he, in this email, he was saying that this budget is bigger than Florida and Texas combined, and that they want to give illegal immigrants $15,000 to $20,000 for, I'm like, illegals are going to get that? What about us Americans? I mean, it's ridiculous,
Right.
that they want to do that. And he was just saying it was passed in the middle of the night. So, I mean, I don't know how many people really approved it, but, there's been a lot of, the New York Post, a lot of these, they've been bashing this bill. And, there's definitely more people against Cuomo every day, so.
Yeah. And it's like, why is he still there?
I know. I go, get him out of there, and just to backtrack, I know I did talk a little bit about him the last time, but it's so wild because, I've been fighting corruption for so many years and I've taken up so much with so many people. It's like these people come out of the woodwork that I have a relationship to. And so there was an attorney, her name is Deborah Katz, and she came out representing a woman named Charlotte Bennett. And I know she also took up some issues about Cuomo, about him attempting to intimidate, this witness. But I came upon her because she was taking up an issue with the Attorney General, how there was all these conflicts of interest in her case tied to what was going on with the assembly, plus Cuomo's, because you had Cuomo who wants to do his own investigation on himself. Then you have the assembly that ended up hiring. Now, I had been going on at them about international law firms and all this. And who do they hire but an international law firm to represent Cuomo? And it ended up, I said, oh, isn't that interesting? And then the Attorney General's doing her own, investigation. And so what was hysterical was there's in this, at this law firm, that's how I can't think of the name, it's Davis something or other. At this law firm, I think she was an appellate judge. There was an appellate judge who was married to someone in this law firm, okay? So there's that kind of conflict. And then what Cuomo has created, when they looked at all these appellate judges who would be involved in making decisions on this impeachment, 7 of them Cuomo appointed to be in their appellate position. So there's a huge conflict of interest by Cuomo to protect him, in essence, in that position. Now, Speaker Heastie, I took up issues with him in my own matter years ago with a few other people in the assembly. So I've said to Speaker Heastie, I'm like, Speaker Heastie, you are a conspirator in my situation with Cuomo, which ties to Schwarzenegger. Harris was involved, so there's that whole issue. So it ends up, after I saw this attorney, Deborah Katz, taking up issues on conflicts of interest and this and that, I said, you know what, I'm going to add her into an email with a bunch of them. And I said, this is what's really going on behind the scenes, Attorney Deborah Katz. There's much bigger issues going on here tied to Cuomo. I'm sure she's like, oh my gosh, there really is, And so I say, oh yeah. And and then that's not, and then you got the nursing home issues, which yes. I don't remember if I spoke about this on the show last time, but it had come out too that his I think it's one of his secretaries, her whole family was tied to this lobbying group for the nursing homes. So they were basically Cuomo had blocked where you couldn't file any lawsuits against the nursing homes or whatever. And then it ended up the assembly reversed that. So he was blocking constitutional rights for due process if anyone wants to file a claim, which they've done also with the foreclosures in the state of New York. They blocked people from any due process unless you filed what's called a request for judicial intervention. I've said this to this assemblyman, the man his name is Layler, actually, I'll mention that, the one I do like. I had asked him to find out who was the one who authorized that there could be a no judicial foreclosure process, because that's a total violation of the Constitution right there. So meanwhile, but then I laugh because now Cuomo, he's investigating himself. There's a lot of different, the New York Post, because they have Janice Dean, who's the weather lady there. Her in-laws had died, so she's been very vocal against Cuomo. And there is quite a few people who want Cuomo removed. And I've made my 2 cents. Yes, he should be arrested. He should be removed. I mean, the state is a mess. He's been in there for years, and the state is a mess. Our courts are a horror show. Because of him, he could have been doing things for years to try and change, the outcome of what exists, just as Kamala Harris could have been doing, but they didn't do anything. So it ends up, then he brings in, and I crack up because I'm like, oh my gosh. He hires to help him with his own investigation. He brings in this guy, attorney Paul Fishman. And I said, oh my gosh. I go, now Fishman for many years was the U.S. attorney in New Jersey, okay? And he ended up, now this is going back, I'm thinking Bridgegate happened in 2013. And that was a big thing tied to Governor Chris Christie. But they did question if there was some aspect tied to Cuomo at all. I don't know if anything ever materialized with that. But it was this whole issue where some Fort Lee, New Jersey, I don't know if you know Fort Lee, New Jersey. It's right by the George Washington Bridge.
Okay.
But it ended up, supposedly there was I don't remember if he was a mayor or somebody who wasn't going to vote for Christie. He was against Christie. So supposedly they created this whole traffic jam situation at the bridge. And it became this big scandal for Christie. But meanwhile, he had a bigger scandal really behind in the Hurricane Sandy project, which a lot of got covered up. But so a lot of people were after Christie over Bridgegate and this and that. But Paul Fishman, before Paul Fishman came in, who was the previous U.S. attorney, was Governor Chris Christie. So they're all tied into one another, okay? And so Paul Fishman, I think it was in 2014. Now I had a whole big bunch of things about Christie besides the courts. I was taking up mainly the issues on the Hurricane Sandy project, which I was a whistleblower. And it ended up, this Family Civil Liberties Union got a whole bunch of people together, a lot of people. And they had a particular event with attorney Paul Fishman and FBI to bring in different complaints on Governor Chris Christie. A lot was tied to the pork corruption, different things of that nature. Whatever happens with that? Nothing. No one ever sees anything ever happen, right? Christie's, on ABC now, parading himself around. And so to me, Fishman's the biggest joke. But that's, how I view most of the U.S. attorneys and all these positions anyway. And so that had me laughing. I go, oh my gosh. So of course I have to comment on that, and then, and even really, who else is tied into that whole thing with Bridgegate and who represented Christie is FBI Director Wray. He ended up representing Christie. So he's another one. Now, who knows what he's doing in the FBI, but they're all tied in as buddies. So nothing ever gets done, because it's just so corrupt. And so everybody gets to stay, free, and they run rampant doing their crimes or whatever they're doing, and it doesn't matter to nobody.
Mhm.
So that's a lot with that. So then the next one, I go, this just keeps getting better and better. So next comes, now they're up to a total of 10 victims now on Cuomo, okay? So the ninth victim is a woman named Cheryl, and she hires attorney um, Gloria Allred. Do you know
Hmm.
who she is?
That sounds familiar. I don't know her. I don't know.
Attorney Gloria Allred, she'll claim she takes on victims' rights and things of this nature. And what she is known for, really, is she takes on actors' cases or people who are celebrities.
Hmm.
So, like Tiger Woods, when he had a mistresses and all this, she brings out different victims that are supposedly tied in. She's done. Who else? She's been involved. Bill Cosby.
Huh.
She does that type of stuff, and she at times was on TV. Her daughter Lisa Bloom is another attorney. She has done television, so she's known for that type of cases that she'll take on. So when I exposed back in 2009, I had, besides my case, I had 6 cases of corruption tied to this judge, right? And I have who subpoenaed Schwarzenegger, right? An actor, right?
Hmm.
So at first I had tried the American Civil Liberties Union to take
Yeah,
those cases. They're a waste of time.
they are.
Everybody's a waste of time. Everything is a waste of time.
Mhm.
And so it ended up, I had approached her. I gave her information. And at the time, this was before, it has to be probably 2010 to 2011. This is before Brown becomes governor in California. And he has a personal, I've also subpoenaed him in my matter.
Mhm.
And I had this attorney, Nathan Barrakin. He's the deputy attorney general. He's involved in my case. I turned my case over to him because I talked to him on the day they violate my jury trial. And, so he's involved in my matter. And, I'm giving him other information. At that time, Harris wasn't even involved. So he had gotten this case information, and I also had the U.S. Marshal. And so it ended up, I had Gloria Allred involved for a few months, actually.
Hmm.
And at one point, Brown ceases Barrakin being involved during this time frame. And, and she knew at the same time frame, like late 2010, the insurance company in my case, First Mercury Insurance, Richard Smith, who is the CEO, who was involved with Wilson Elser, they were selling themselves. They were a publicly traded company. They were selling themselves to Fairfax Financial Holding. So I was like, well, this should be settled before this sale goes through, right? I have
Mhm.
Wilson Elster, everybody involved. And of course, I'm asking Allred to help me, to help try and bring this to a close. And of course, does she help me? No, of course not, right?
Hmm.
So here's so much for her being a person, who'll take on, Schwarzenegger. All these cases are tied in to some degree. And I did have the child kidnapping, James Matthew. I did want to try and bring that in too, as part of it, because he was a kidnapped child. And, but of course that didn't need to be settled right then. But, I really have no respect for her
Mhm.
because so I made a point. I said, you know what? She has a serious issue here, Allred, because there's a big conflict of her interest for her tied to Cuomo, who's also tied to this whole thing. So I said I said to Allred, I said, I wasn't nice to her either. I
Yeah.
said, Allred, I said, you should give up that case. You should give it to attorney Deborah Katz because you have a big conflict of interest here with everybody. And even the James Matthew, the little child case, because I've now given that to the attorney general because Holder never did anything, and no one ever did anything in Jersey, but I gave it to her because this woman, the grandmother of this child, her house is torched in Staten Island. So I said, well, you know what? You have jurisdiction because of that part of the case, because it really is a federal issue too. But so I said, you have, Gloria Allred, you have a lot of conflicts of interest here in this matter with Cuomo.
Mhm.
So I don't know what's going to happen there or not, but I did come out on her, so, I'm going, oh my God, look who's involved now, I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, and I think more's gonna be coming out being involved as well too.
who is?
I think more people are gonna, come out being involved with all
Oh
of
my,
this as well.
I have
Yeah.
so many people involved in my matter. So it was hysterical. It was literally like I just wrote the whole thing about Fishman. And then it was like literally, I see this. It's not even like I look at a lot of information. I hardly look at the news that much. Only certain things here and there. It's not like I'm reading the news all day, but I always find if there's something for me to know, it comes right to me. And it's like, oh, look at this, and I go, now I got to make another statement already. Because I say, I hope I don't have to make any more statements.
Mhm.
And then, oh, voila, there's somebody else who's coming out of the woodwork, so, and I would actually arrest her because she colluded with Wilson Elser. She colluded with the State Bar of California and allowed Jerry Brown and Schwarzenegger to harm me and these victims for years.
Mhm.
And, so so I wasn't very nice to her at all. And what's very interesting about this attorney, Deborah Katz, is she is also involved with a project on government oversight. And she takes up issues on whistleblowers, corruption, stuff like that. Now, we know most of these agencies don't go far enough in what they do, So I did say, because she is tied into this situation now with the Attorney General James, I said, well, perhaps Attorney Deborah Katz, you should also be part of my settlement with the Attorney General, since you're involved now and I'm involved, and you take up those issues for federal cases, and I am a federal case. So she has not responded to me at all. And I did comment, and I said, I was reviewing everybody's bar association. So she belongs to the American Bar Association. So I looked at that, and I don't see anything international tied to it, because I was like, is the American Bar Association usurped British or not, or is it
Right.
really just American? I don't know. And then Attorney General James, she is, I forget the name of her bar association. It was created years ago, predominantly to represent Blacks, which probably at one point it was strictly American, but now it is an international. So I go, I don't really know what your allegiance is here, because I've asked her for her oath of office and stuff and questioned her allegiance, because, so, but, and then Cuomo, he's the New York State Bar, and that's also international based.
Mhm.
So I don't know how it all ties all together, because these bar associations are also tied to Britain and international. So,
Mhm.
So there's the question with all these people who are bar attorneys and, what
Well,
their real allegiance is to
well,
Americans.
I think it's kind of annoying when they send you something and it's attorney so and so Esquire. And it's like, Esquire, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and what all that means, but you
Titles
know,
of nobility.
right. And
Titles of nobility.
the thing that was funny, well, way back in the day when they came out with Bill and Ted's, was it Excellent Adventure or something? With,
Mm-hmm.
Keanu Reeves and I can't think of the other guy, but the other guy kept calling himself so and so Esquire, and I'm going, and way back then, I'm going, why is he calling himself Esquire? I just never.
Mm-hmm.
It was supposed to be something like really funny. I don't know, but maybe the kid's father was an attorney, so he would use Esquire as his last, along with his last name.
Last name.
It was this. I don't know, I just thought it was funny. And then when you get into this attorney stuff later on in your life and you see Esquire, all I can think of is Bill and Ted. Excellent
Mm-hmm.
Adventure. You know?
Well, we
Sorry
know
about that.
they're the biggest den of crooks out there, you know.
Oh, I
That's
know.
for
I'm sorry.
sure.
I just had to bring that up because it was just the Esquire just throws me. I just can't get over it.
I know. Well, that's the thing. There's so many issues and problems. It's just like, oh my gosh. So I don't know, but I've said to her, I'm just, can't keep depriving me of my rights. You have enough people you could just take out, and
Mhm.
and Cuomo should be arrested as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm.
And it's just they've postured him in there, and then he's out with these vaccine passports,
Mhm.
which to me is, I'm like, oh my gosh, ridiculous. And it was started for like Madison Square Garden and I think it's called Times Union Center, I think,
Mhm.
from what I originally read, for these arenas. So people have them and, but you know what? It's to me, a violation of HIPAA, everything. Why are you having to disclose that? I think
Mhm.
that's total unconstitutional. I know Florida is against it. I don't know how many other states are, but, they want to try and control us any which way they can.
Mhm.
Um, I saw this funny, I'm not, how do you say it? What do you call them? Memes,
Oh, memes.
memes. Is that how you
Yeah.
say it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like all these zombies. I mean, this is terrible, really, because so many people are getting this shot. I was almost like, maybe I shouldn't even post this because it'll upset people who have taken it. But it had a guy who's like normal looking, and he's like, oh, and there's behind is everybody who looks like they're zombies.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, this is
Yeah.
what happens when you don't take the shot, or
Uh,
something like that. And I'm like, yeah, I go, everyone's a guinea pig. That's for sure. Just
right,
don't know
right.
what
Well,
how it's gonna play out.
there was something on Facebook where they said they used to a while back, they had vaccine passports for some other flu problem. I was trying to find that. I should have screenshotted it. I can't find it. But yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, you know, this is creepy. I really don't want that shot. I really don't.
Oh, I'm not going. I'm not going. I have no interest. I have no interest. I'll take my chances.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez. Yeah.
But yeah, you don't, I mean, you don't know what, I don't know. You hope it's safe for people, but who knows?
No, I mean,
I
yeah, it
I
came out
do
too
find this
fast.
whole thing with this vaccine, this whole pandemic, or really, biological warfare, really against us, the
Mhm.
U.S. and all these other countries.
Mhm.
But it's just the whole timing of it with the elections and just everything that's going on. It's just a very, interesting thing with the timing and how these governments, a lot of them are really shut. Some of them are shut down in certain ways. I know California's saying now they're going to open in, I think, June 15th. So it really is a perfect time to really take down a lot of the systems. And
Yes.
it really is. To me, the time is now. Just do it.
Yeah.
Put that mantra in your head. Just do it.
Mhm.
And because every time today I have known this story, but I haven't really gotten into the whole effects, to understand it, or the crime. Because sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, I know so many different things, and they irk me and upset me
Yes.
sometimes
I
because
know it.
I hate like even learning about them. But this was a murder case that takes place here in Ulster County,
Oh, wow.
and the DA, was very crooked in my case, and besides everybody. But I was under assault the whole time. But
Oh,
here's a murder case, and to me, if you can't even have a murder case, I mean, some of these murder cases are so tainted by these DAs, and
mm,
this is one that really is. But I wrote this. I said I can't even believe this is in a story. I can't even believe it. This man, he was walking late at night, and he gets his head bashed in by a baseball bat
oh,
by
man.
this man who I'm not even sure if he really is the guy. There's so much. Um, cover-ups and stuff in this, but tied to the DA's office and other people involved in prosecuting this. And but the DA, his name's Carnwright, he mentions in like stories, he says, talking about the man who supposedly beat this man with the baseball bat, he says he did not intend to cause serious physical harm, so there will be no felony charges. It's like, how could you bash someone's head in with a
And with
baseball
no
bat
charges.
and have that it's not a serious physical harm? I mean, this man's head, he's like lost half his head. I mean, this is how unbelievable these people are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh my gosh. I go,
Mm-hmm.
how could you literally say that? And then this man, oh, there's a lot of weird things in this whole circumstances, okay? With videos, there's a whole variety of things. I even question if this man really was the actual perpetrator. He probably is, but
Mm-hmm.
who knows really what happened. But then he ends up, he gets, supposedly he's going to have to serve a year. He's going to get a misdemeanor charge, and they let him out in 72 days.
Oh
Like,
my
it's like,
God.
yeah, like talk about just, because supposedly he's an informant to them. So, I mean, this is crazy. Now, and this man, when they prosecute him, they probably shouldn't even have prosecuted him yet, because this man was in a coma. You know, he's on a vent, everything, he's incapacitated, and he did stay alive for about a year to 2 years.
Oh
But he
no.
was, you know, a vegetable pretty much. You know, he couldn't do anything. And they had his whole, you know, there's pictures of him, his brain, I mean, his whole head is missing. And
Oh my gosh.
so it's just a terrible, terrible case. And the more I learned about it, the more like it upsets me. You know, I go, oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, I go, this is just worse than I even realized.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, but it just shows, like here, my friend who had told me originally about this, she's like, you went to jail way longer, way longer than this man, and you didn't even do anything, you know,
Yeah,
but,
right,
but,
right.
you know, and I just couldn't even get nothing because I was just under assault. But, you know, I go, it just makes no sense, you know, and it just shows how terrible some of these DAs get, and you don't know what they have going on there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Uh,
even just because she gave me some names of people tied to it, I want to see who she has, you know, that I have similar. And I put their names in and I start looking, and then like it'll come up with other people's names. And then I'm like, oh, I go, is this person related to this? There's so much nepotism in this county. I
mm-hmm.
go, is this person here in the DA's office, you know, related to this guy who was the superintendent here, who I went to complaining, and of course nobody does anything. But you know, then I'm like, oh, because you know they had crimes coming from the DA's office into the jail and all sorts of stuff, and you know, and it just makes me go like, oh, now I'm questioning this person. Now that I came upon like two new people, three new
Mm-hmm.
people that I'm questioning nepotism tied into, you know, my circumstances, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And it's just this, you know, I go, it just is constantly, you uncover some other little potential conflict, or you know, something that ties in a, you know, unusual way, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, it's so
and so there's been a big issue getting her case. The DA who's in there now, who's new, it, he now I've asked him to drop the charges on my case too. This is why it's going to be interesting to see what happens tomorrow, because you know, he can just drop the charges too, and but you know, he wants to have, you know, because there's double jeopardy then on that
mm-hmm.
case, you know, because he's already been tried. But I'm hoping that they arrest this DA. Like a numerous bunch of people need to be arrested, and hopefully if they do that, that will help her case to be retried, you know. And you know, so I don't know what's going to happen here yet, but it's an
Mm-hmm.
interesting story, and is, you know, very tragic,
Wow.
you
Yes.
know, that you know, that you know, you can't even, you know, some of the things she was telling me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I go, oh my. Why are they covering this stuff up? Why is this cover up going on in this?
Mm.
It's, even with videos and, some of it'll work, then, oh, it's blocked off, she couldn't
Wow.
get them, all sorts of things, all
Jeez.
sorts of things where, that this corruption, everybody really in her case, I would
Mhm.
pretty much arrest everybody that was tied
Yeah.
into it, I think a lot of them have to have a serious problem in it, you know?
Yeah, it's probably a lot of the perpetual lying that they just can't control themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just unreal. But
Yeah.
even this new DA, when I was, and this was interesting, I was looking at something on him, and it ended up, what I found, he had been a public defender. And I don't know if he was a public defender when my case was there, but the public defenders, I mean, I never had a public defender. I never hired a public defender because they put in this standby attorney. I never even heard of it, but the guy would do nothing for me. So I had no attorney for 5 months. And so I'm like, well, did you know about my situation? He probably did, because one of the women there told me that they had meetings and talked about it. So everyone knew I had
Mhm.
no anybody representing me,
Mhm.
and even I couldn't hire anybody.
Mhm.
I couldn't hire nobody, so I'm just like, and they really used me to incriminate myself because I had nobody to talk to,
Mhm.
and they blocked that. And I had no problem testifying because I just assumed the other party would be testifying, but I don't even think they ever testified. They just strictly used me to incriminate myself. But I didn't know that because I had nobody to even ask a question to. You
Oh, yeah,
know,
isn't that terrible? It's terrible.
unreal, unreal. And then he's also, I added in there, but I just to take it up with human rights. But I go, well, none of these agencies. He was also tied to the Human Rights Commission, and at one point in time in the county. And I said, well, I know if I go there and I could file human rights charges on everybody here right now because you're
Mhm.
still harassing me over the same issue,
Mhm.
and violating my rights and depriving me of my rights for months now after you've been having this issue. um, so I could take that, but I know there's nobody in the Human Rights Department who
Yeah.
will take up anything about human rights against anybody who is a county employee. That's
Mhm.
not going to happen. I don't even know why you have it,
Right.
because
Right.
it does not work. You're not going to do it. I know I've called before and things like that. I know they don't do it. So, you're always at a loss, like at a dead end all the time. It's a continual
Mhm.
battle. And and this is just a few cases. I mean, how many cases are there? Oh my gosh. When I was on the other day, when I don't know if you saw it, it was a CPS News Network. Actually, there was a woman on there who spoke, and she's actually from the county here. Her
Mm.
name's Francesca Amata Banfield.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to say much about her per se, but she did talk on the video. But about CPS and stuff of that nature,
Mhm.
but then they had on some of the recordings by Senator Nancy Schaefer
Mhm.
and things that she talked about and how she went trying to get people to take a stand and all this and that, and nobody would because they're all afraid of losing their jobs, and so you just never get hope. So anybody who even wants to pass bills or any of that, they're going to violate it anyway. They don't care about anything.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem, is they just don't care. And I've said this to this, now that I'm talking to this new controller. I was surprised. I actually got her on the phone the other day even. And I said, it's not hard to make sure that the Constitution is being abided by in every case, to monitor that. It's not hard. How
Mhm.
hard is that? It really isn't hard. There should be a check. Is this case being, is it falling under the Constitution? Is there something wrong with the case? Whatever. You could be documenting that, and know that there's a problem in the case and it should be resolved or settled or whatever the issue is, if somebody's really doing the wrong thing,
Mhm.
and misconduct of some sort. The Innocent Project, I had seen a story or two on them. They said in for wrongful convictions and that, prosecutorial misconduct is the big reason. and also police misconduct too. Both of those are the main emphasis behind a lot of these wrongful convictions and things.
Mhm.
And how long did you go to jail for?
She wanted me in there for 2 months,
Mm-hmm.
and luckily, I got out in 5 days because they just weren't giving me my medication, and I was going
Mm-hmm.
into withdrawal, and that's a human rights violation, but, who cares, right? So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky, my father, who was 79 at the time, paid a $2,000 purge amount that the judge felt she had to have, and, I was able to walk out of there, and then 5 months later, I had a heart attack.
Oh wow. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And why did they arrest you?
Oh, for non-support because my ex-husband felt he had to have over $1,000 a month in child support after, um, false allegations caused me to lose my job as a registered
Oh.
nurse.
Oh wow. Mm-hmm. Hmm.
So the
You
corruption
know,
doesn't end. It just
it
doesn't.
doesn't end.
No.
I know. You know, they really need to make a whole new process. To me, it shouldn't be. I wouldn't even have a court process. I think it should be, you know, I don't know if every state has collaborative law. No family. I don't think, as long as you can keep your family intact, your children intact. Even if you paid an attorney, for a short time period to be together, you paid $5,000 even, or whatever it may be. Hopefully even less, to just say, let's sit down, let's talk about the issues,
Mhm,
work to unite, keep everybody together and united, and get people just done 1, 2, 3, as
mhm,
fast as you can. If you have to do some discovery or interrogatories or whatever, but really push even before you come to court, maybe, or to a settlement hearing, to really have everything, all your paperwork has to be there before you even file or something, or
mhm.
I don't know, just there just needs to be a lot of changes, you know.
Definitely,
It's
definitely.
it's just ridiculous what families have been subjected to, all
Mhm.
for their gain, and whatever
Right,
their
right.
their deal is, so it's
Mm,
it's tragic for so many families. Oh my gosh.
mhm.
I can't believe, like, in April here, I'll be literally 17 years to the date, like when I filed for my divorce. So it's like 17 years I'm getting divorced. I still don't even have a lawful divorce decree. I mean, it's like,
Mhm.
come on already, it's
Yeah, yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like, get it over with, you know?
Yeah. I'm so done. I was done with this when I was fighting this in 2006. One of the things that always upset me was the trauma that they were causing,
Mhm,
besides the rights violations and that, but was the trauma that they caused. And, like any of us we could have a heart attack anytime, or whatever, from the
mhm.
stress of this, even just keeping me hanging here in limbo, or you or
Right,
anybody,
right.
you just don't know,
Yeah,
you know.
and they file continuances left and right, and then that leaves you up in limbo, like you said, and you're wondering what's gonna happen next. When's it going to happen?
Hmm.
Yeah, they've just gotta totally take apart family court. Just get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
it just needs to go. It's
oh,
terrible,
well, you know what? In
terrible.
fact,
Oh,
yeah, I just did a podcast with Dina Klustra, and she's a trauma torture coach, and she talks
mhm.
about how they traumatize you in the courtrooms.
Oh, yeah,
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
yeah,
it's fascinating.
yeah.
Well,
Oh,
and
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, it's all underhanded. It's this underhanded, antics that they do, and
Mhm,
be it they're dragging you to court and it's a wasted hearing, and you're paying money for it or whatever. I'm actually surprised. Sometimes I say to myself, I was having a conversation with somebody about this who's also a court victim. And, I'm like actually surprised that, we've kind of become like, we think we're in a civilized society, but we
mm,
really aren't.
mm-mm.
It's like the Wild West.
Right.
And, like, you really think, how come people haven't just started just shooting people?
Mhm,
Like, I'm surprised you don't see more parents shooting people stealing their kids, or whatever.
mhm,
But,
mhm.
even I've thought about that at my property. Like, I would say, maybe I should lay in wait and shoot somebody,
No,
I
no.
told the U.S. Marshal. I said, I'm gonna shoot somebody if they try to come in here with me, or whatever. I'm like, do I have to like lay in wait and kill somebody? Like, is that where I'm at? And I don't want to be having to kill. And I said, if I killed somebody, then they're going to really throw me in jail forever, if I did that, because then they say, oh, well, we're still stealing your house anyway,
Yeah.
whatever. But, I go, Jesus, it would have been so much easier, but one time, I was saying this, and it's like, there was this attorney. I've called her a thief in court, actually, and I mentioned
Awesome.
her on your show. She actually had a murder at her office. I mean, this woman is like nasty. She's
Oh my
vile.
God.
She's a vile woman, and I don't remember what it was, but we were walking out of the courtroom, and my husband was walking with her, and I was there by myself, and she said something. I don't know what. I don't even remember what it was. But I stepped in front of her because she was like Miss Underhanded, like you can't imagine. I stepped in front of her, and I never cursed really in court ever, really. I think twice. This is probably one of the first times. And I stepped in front of her, and I looked her in the face, like face to face, and I said, "Fuck you," right? And her skin literally went from white to red. Like she
Wow.
was afraid I was going to harm her. And, and then of course, then she like stomps off like she's going to get the cop or whatever, the bailiff,
Mhm.
and I just kept walking. But, I really thought like, I could just deck her.
Yeah, right,
But
right.
it's like, why should I even be thinking I should be decking people? But I mean, look how much time and years it would have saved me if I decked her, maybe,
Uh,
but, but it puts you in that kind of mindset. You know what I'm
mhm.
saying?
Mhm.
Where it's like, meanwhile, you're like Miss Underhanded, robbing you here and this, and you're doing whatever you're doing. But it's like, really, I should have just decked her, and but and said she's a thief and she's robbing me, and she
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
but, but it's like this. It's like we're supposed to be like, oh, this is okay.
Yeah, and it's not
It's not
okay.
okay.
No,
It's
it's
not
not okay.
okay.
Well, you know what? Because I have a story if you wanna hear something funny. Um, well, I guess before we part, but, I was in court, and the opposing attorney always hands me a bunch of old paperwork, like old
Mhm.
filings. I'm going,
Mhm.
why is he like, is this supposed to rile me up or get me upset? Because I look at it and I look at him like, with this bored expression, right?
Mhm.
'Cause, whatever. But, as it turned out, the judge, of course, ruled against me because there was collusion. Anyway, so I took those papers and, of course, you have your desk and he has his desk. So I took the papers and I just tossed them over to his desk, which landed by his briefcase, where the jerk
Mhm.
had his briefcase open and he was putting papers in. So,
Mhm.
like, he, like, looked up and then he kinda looks at me like, "Oh." And then he looks, down at his briefcase and he just continued putting his stuff away. And,
Mhm.
and the ex looks up at him and says, and now he was standing like 3 feet away from the attorney. And he said, "Was she trying to throw those at me?" He said it just like that. I'm going thinking to
Uh-huh.
myself, "Oh my God." And then at the meantime, a bailiff, this poor bailiff was probably 80 years old, running up to
Mhm.
me, shaking his finger saying, "Miss, don't you ever do that again." And
Uh-huh.
I said, "Don't worry, it's not my first time." And then I had another lawyer come up behind me because he wanted to get his paperwork out. And I'm here thinking to myself, if you think I was gonna throw something at you, you'd feel it.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I hear you.
That would
I
that
know
that was
because
just
people stay very civilized, but meanwhile you like have all this trauma, these emotions that are
Yeah.
going on, and it's like holy cow,
It's
but
like, "Buddy, I'm a summer breeze right now, okay?"
yeah. That's funny. I know. It's interesting when you think of things you've done or said or whatever sometimes,
Oh,
It's
yeah,
like,
I've
oh
got
my
other
gosh.
stories. Yeah, we should share stories of stupidity, of these
It is, and that's the thing, it is all stupidity. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is just stupidity. But no one, it's like ridiculous, that the stupidity. It
It
really is
is.
just stupidity.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's ludicrous, really.
Mhm, mhm.
There's sometimes I just can't. There's some days I say to myself, "How the hell have I been fighting this crap for this many years?"
So
I
yeah,
go,
exactly,
I go,
exactly.
this is ridiculous, ridiculous, because it is just stupidity.
Mhm, mhm,
And in humanity, it is crimes against humanity. It's treason. It's all these things. I
mhm,
mean, and even these politicians. Like I've had a lot of politicians involved with mine, and it's
mhm.
like, can't someone just do something right? It's like,
Right?
what is your excuse?
Yeah, they
I
and then
used
they
to
come up with
I
other
used to say
excuses.
this for Harris, and the woman, an attorney. Her name is Deborah Bain, who was in my case too, for like, she was in there from like '08 or whenever. She was in there for years with me. And I would say, maybe you'd be a leader if you ever stop violating my rights.
Right.
I did something. I mean, this is ridiculous, ridiculous.
Mm.
So, I mean, it's not like I need to expose all this organized crime, corruption. Who's doing anything on it anyway?
Yeah, no,
I mean,
it's frustrating. I totally know.
it is
Uh,
frustrating.
I'd
You
like to
know.
have I'd like to have you back on the show again if you want to come back on with any more updates of anything.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe tomorrow will be a blessed day. I
Yeah,
hope,
right.
or
Oh,
something good goes for
well,
once.
I'll be praying for you, believe me.
Thank you. I'm praying. I'm praying. I
Oh
go,
my
please,
goodness.
someone be an authority for once.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my
Exactly.
gosh.
Yes,
So,
yes.
military, get in here. We need you to take this stuff down, and
Yep,
save our American families from these
yes.
torture house gulags that we got going on here.
Oh, well put, definitely. Hang on one second, okay? Slam
All
the
right. Thanks for the show, Marianne.
Oh, sure. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms and in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again with Cheryl and other guests in the future. Thank you again, Cheryl.
Thank you, Marianne. Have a good night.
You too.